And once again, good morning, church. It's my privilege to say to you that one of the key indicators, I really believe this, one of the key indicators of the spiritual health of a congregation or of a Christian individual is their active participation in the mission of the church, to bring the message of Jesus to their local community and to the ends of the earth. Because missions is not something that someone else does over there. Missions is a vital part of the ministry of the local church and each Christian believer. So we are happy today to be able to share with you some news and some encouragement from several of the missionaries and ministries that we support. And they represent us in the various places and the ways in which they bring Jesus to the world and to the campus, to our community. So we're going to start with Haley Ryan. Haley, come on up. Haley's, as we said, is with student mobilization on the KU campus, and we're glad to welcome her.
Thank you. I think there we go. So I feel like I've met most of you guys, but if I haven't, I'm Haley, and I serve with STUMO. Student Mobilization is the long title. And this is my 6th school year, so it has flown by. Very grateful for the church enabling me to be there. So I have a couple quick updates that I'll share what God's done in the past year. So the first picture you'll see, thought we'd start kind of zooming big picture, what God's done beyond the college campus, because the vision for my life and for STUMO, but I will live with this vision regardless if I work on staff with STUMO, is that the Great Commission is the mission we each should own as believers and followers of Jesus, and we each get to be a part of making disciples of all nations, and we can do that in our little pockets of the world that we're in. But I'm really grateful to God for how He has multiplied my discipleship on campus to the ends of the earth, which is the prayer of why we are there in the first place. And by God's grace, Courtney and Venus both had come to follow Jesus 5 years ago, my first year on staff with STUMO. Had the privilege of discipling them throughout their time in college. And now Courtney is actually with Ethnos, which you'll get to hear a little bit of Bible translation in a bit of an update. But Courtney is there right now, and she is learning what it looks like to be a missionary to a tribal group around the world. And so she is currently serving. I got to go visit her back in February, and it was a privilege to get to meet her friends and just see what her classes are like and get to sit in on different things and experience what she's actually doing there. And then Venus, she also came to follow Jesus about 5 years ago and now is on staff with a college ministry in Mexico. She is from Venezuela, so she wanted to steward the way that she'd been made and designed and gifted to go to an area of the world where she could minister specifically in the way she's been made. So she is there for another year and then and praying that she would remain there long term. And then the next photo is that of what's happening at KU specifically now. So on your left, your left, gosh. So on the left, that is my discipleship group right now of girls. They're juniors in college at KU. They've all come to Christ in the last 2 years or so. And what's been really fun is getting to invest deeply in them as they are now turning around and investing in their friends. And so all 3 of those girls are ministering to others around them in their sorority. Some of them have gotten to see people come to follow Jesus and are discipling them. And so it's been a huge privilege getting to really watch multiplication happen as I'm discipling them and they're turning around and investing in others. And so Shelby specifically has gotten to see her friend Alyssa come to follow Jesus about a year ago. And now Alyssa is learning how to be established in her faith and learn what it looks like to follow Jesus and apply His word to her life and live in obedience to Him. And I think there's nothing like discipling someone else that actually will disciple you more deeply, because you can't teach someone to do something you're not doing. And so it's a privilege for me to get to invest in them because they challenge me more than anyone to grow in my own walk with Jesus. But then it's exciting to watch them as their maturity in their faith has just been exponential in the last year as they have owned the Great Commission and really begun living it and applying it to their life. And then the next photo is that of some highlights from establishing. So I mentioned Alyssa and God. I cannot describe it other than obviously it is a work of God. But I mean, so many girls have come to follow Jesus in the last 1.5 to 2 years and now are engaged in Bible studies of getting to be discipled more deeply, taught how to walk with God, read His word, pray, walk in community with others, share their faith, really live as a disciple maker. And so these are just a handful of photos of our Bible studies that we have us praying together in the top right corner. We pray for the world every Bible study, and so really trying to disciple that into them, that they would live with the vision to the ends of the earth. Some of the photos is us in Bible studies, getting time in the Word in the mornings. That top picture is us at a building on campus. I'll meet them on campus often, and we'll have our time with God in the morning together and read the Word and then talk about what we learned. And so it's been a privilege watching each of them. A verse I would describe them all by is Colossians 2, 6, and 7, and John 8, 31 and 32, which talks of how as disciples we prove that we are his disciple if we continue in his word. And they really are each being rooted and established deeply in God's word and overflowing with a love for him and for people. And then the next slide is just a specific highlight of one of those girls specifically. I couldn't share about all of them, but if you want to know more, come find me. I'm a chatter, so I can tell you every story you want to know. But Sarah is the redhead in the photos. She started following Jesus in January of this past year, and God has just grown her to incredible maturity in her faith. And last week on Wednesday, she started her first investigative Bible discussion with some of her friends that don't know Jesus. She's on the lacrosse team at KU, the club team. I thought about it. Yesterday I was in Manhattan watching her lacrosse game, getting to meet her teammates and trying to kind of help her as she's trying to learn how to share her faith with them. And so I'm trying to meet them and kind of be alongside her as she's doing that. I wish I could show a photo of that, but too late. It was yesterday. But this is us like teaching her how to memorize scripture. We're getting to share our faith together. She started her own Bible study, like I said, with girls investigating their faith. And the best part is her confidence that she has in God, that as she's rooting her life in him. She told me about a month ago that God was putting on her heart to reach out to her teammates and share the gospel with them. And she said, if you want to come, you can come to my Bible study. And I said, great. Would you like help learning how to do that? And she's like, yeah, sure. So she's just so confident walking in Lord, and I love it. So the next is the last picture that I will show. And that is a highlight that is to come. So our winter conference is every January 2nd through the 5th. It's in Branson, Missouri. It is geared for students anywhere from no background spiritually to are being discipled and walking deeply with God and actively as a disciple maker. And so we are praying for our winter conference. If you want to join us in praying, this was last January. But we are praying to the Lord to raise up people that will go, because the amount of people that come to Christ at this conference every year gain vision for a life of making disciples and for the world is just crazy to think about, the impact that one conference can make. But in the current culture of just a lack of commitment and just a fear of taking the next step, there's a big hesitancy of students to really take a step to take 4 days out of their winter break to investigate their faith. So you guys can join us in praying that God would raise up men and women to go to our winter conference so that they can hear the gospel clearly and place their trust in Jesus and live a fruitful life for him. And so that is a prayer request and a highlight to come that you'll get to hear about as I share some photos with the congregation afterwards. And you also could be praying for our Thanksgiving meal. Me and my roommate that I work with, we are hosting a Friendsgiving for all the girls that we're sharing the gospel with right now. And there's going to be about 70 people in my home, which I have a townhouse, so that does not fit 70 people. But we're going to pack into my garage, and we're going to cook a meal for them so that they can come into our home and we can share Christ with them as they're in our home. And so if you want to be praying for that God would use that so that they smell the aroma of Christ, it would build memories with them and trust so that they could come to know Jesus if they have not placed their trust in him yet. So that's next Tuesday if you want to be praying. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Haley. Yep. And I'm sure you could talk to her afterwards. You probably wouldn't mind some help with that. Maybe someone might want to help with that. Can talk to you afterwards. This is Mary Katzer with Family Promise, and she is part of another local ministry that we support. Mary,
Right.
thank you so much.
Do you mind playing my video first? Thank you.
It did so much, quite a bit. I mean, more than people ever know. Well, I know I can speak for her. She's completely content with her school and home, having the home and having somewhere to go to see her, play with her friends and learn. That's an incredible thing for her and for me. I mean, because I know she's comfortable and she's happy. And as for me, if she's happy, I'm happy.
I was able to find an employer that was willing to hire somebody with a specific background that prohibited me from being hired at places that I was qualified to work. But since not being in the program, not only am I working full-time, I'm working 50 plus hours a week, and I'm in a supervisor's position. And I'm being able to do so while my son is being successful in school. So there's been a complete turnaround in opportunities for us.
I've maintained independence. Hadn't had any problems with bills. Been able to save. 100% works. I'm not worried about whether the kids need clothes or pay for lunches or anything like that. It's just everything's a lot easier.
We purchased a home, I would say approximately 6 years or 5 years after we graduated from Family Promise. So that was a big joy. Never thought I was ever going to be able to buy a home, but I figured I knew I was going to do it. But Family Promise and the organization helped it come quicker than it would if I'd done it traditionally.
We are part of the promise.
I am a part of the promise.
We are part of the promise.
Are the promise.
We are the promise.
We are the promise.
I am the promise.
All right. Is this on? Okay. Okay, well, that's a great video. Our other video that we just did is about celebrating our 15-year anniversary this fall. And something that's really cool about me speaking here today is that the very first night that we were open 15 years ago, we were here in this building. Our family stayed here. So thank you for that, and thank you guys for all the support that you've given us over the 15 years. I just want to tell you a little bit about where we started, where we've been, and where we are right now, because as with everything, a lot changes in 15 years. So Family Promise, for those of you who don't know, is a national organization. There's 200 affiliates across the country. We are one of, I think, 3 or 4 here in Kansas. And since we have been open, well, when we started, we were serving 4 families at a time, right? 4 families went to churches 1 week at a time. They came here, they stayed for a week, they were given food, they were able to spend the night. Hospitality, like the host, some of you guys, I see familiar faces, were here giving service, right? The hands of the Lord were here serving them. So we've been doing that for a long time. We added in some programs. I think some of them were up there on the video. So we've added in programs. One was like, well, we can only serve 4 families in churches. Let's do another program called 515. That was the number of phone calls we got the first year we started keeping track. So program 515 was just, you get all the same services, but you have to stay where you are. So maybe you're doubled up with another family sleeping on a couch, or maybe you're camping at the lake. So we were able to serve more families that way. We were like, oh, we got to keep serving families because there's a huge need. So we also were able to get some transitional houses. Now we have around 10 houses that if a family saves money, works hard, then they are able to move into one of our transitional houses, and they, gain a good rental history, and then they're able to graduate and go out on their own into their own housing. So, God works in great ways. Right before the pandemic hit, we started working on a prevention program and on a diversion program, because we know that sheltering for families, for children and their parents or grandparents, it's really traumatic. So we started working on prevention and diversion, and it was the right timing because the pandemic hit. And, when we were told stay home, that was hard for us, but if you don't have a home, it's really hard to stay home. So it became a healthcare issue too. So we were, at that point, we had to get out of the churches, like March, whatever that was, March 12, 2020, we had to stop our rotation program. we really had to figure something else out. So we started sheltering families in place in some of our transitional houses. But then we came back from the pandemic, and, everything had shifted. I mean, during the pandemic, it was like shift, shift, shift. What are we going to do? What was it? Pivot. We kind of got tired of hearing the word pivot all the time. But because of the diversion and the prevention program being in place, we were able to help so many families. So after the pandemic, we just haven't had the amount of churches. Like half of the churches who are hosting our families were able to come back and host. Well, that's relying on, a few people to do a lot of work. So we are now, it's pretty exciting, we are currently doing what we call a static site. And what we've seen from around the nation, this is what most Family Promise organizations are doing around the nation. So rather than the families moving church to church, the families get to be in one place and the volunteers come there, right? So we have a lot of great volunteers. Right now we're just doing 3 evenings a week, so this is an opportunity if you're interested. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we're bringing meals to the families, and somebody spends the night every night, providing, lunches and breakfast and lunch supplies. So there's an opportunity still to provide hospitality. We still have 1,000 volunteers. That's what makes Family Promise what Family Promise is the love of all of our volunteers coming and supporting our families. We also have a really strong staff right now. Thank you for your prayers. This is really hard work. I'm not on staff. I'm the board president, by the way. So our staff is really, really hardworking. But it's hard work, and they work so hard for our families. I love watching the videos because I see familiar faces. And we try to work hard to get input from our families. So we have a graduate advisory panel that helps us make a lot of our decisions. We just redid our mission statement a few years ago. They wrote that mission statement for us. We also have on our board quite a bit of lived experience, people who've been through our program. And on our staff, we have lived experience. So we really try to listen to the people that we are serving. And they become part of us. I mean, it's called Family Promise. We are all a family. Not just in Family Promise, but we are all a family. So right now, our big news is the board decided, we voted about 6 months ago to find a permanent static site. The one we're in now, it's temporary, it can only hold 2 families. So we are looking for a static site. We actually found one. We're getting pretty close to a purchase if everything goes through. So it's super exciting time for us, for our families, to be able to serve them in a way that works well for everybody. So I'm trying to think of anything else I was going to say. Well, if you guys have questions about how you can get involved, we also just started our life skills classes back up several months ago. That's Thursday evening. All the families come. Oh, I'm going to say about stabilization. So prevention's our biggest program right now, and stabilization, right? So stabilization is like when families get housed, keeping them housed, giving them the resources that they need to be able to stay stable in their housing. So Thursday evenings, people come, life skills classes. We do need volunteers to bring dinners for that, or even to help watch the kiddos, do a little babysitting. So there's a lot of opportunities to be involved if you want to come chat with me at the table after services, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Mary. Appreciate that. Well, you saw the whole lineup up here, and there's more that weren't able to be here, but there's representatives and there's information. Be sure you stop by afterwards. But right now, it's a privilege to listen to John Kerstetter. He and Melanie have been with Ethnos 360, formerly New Tribes Mission, for a long, long time. It's our privilege to support them, and I'm grateful for the chance to hear from John this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, Melanie really wanted to come, and unfortunately she wasn't able to come. We were receiving some house guests, and so she had to stay, but she sends her greetings to everyone. And is disappointed she wasn't able to come with me. We are with New Tribes Mission, or Ethnos 360 as we're now called. And we went out in 1991 in January to Brazil. And First Christian was a part of our ministry. And we count it a privilege that we've been able to partner with you all over all these years as we raised our family in Brazil. We were there for about 20 years. And now we're back at the training center, training new missionaries to go overseas. And so we just really thank you for the part that you've played in keeping our family in Brazil. We've got 4 children. Charity, our oldest, she's in Chicago, and she's a nanny and does babysitting up there in Chicago. And then our next son, BJ and Carissa, they've got 2 children, and they're involved in a ministry called Chosen People Ministries, which is working with evangelizing Israelis. And then our third daughter, Bethany, she married a fellow named Zach. They have 5 children, and he's involved in IT. And then last of all, Josh, our youngest, married a gal, and she grew up in Indonesia, and they have 2 children, and he's an accountant working in Milwaukee. So our mission is involved in coordinating believers to evangelize unreached people groups, to translate scriptures, and to see indigenous churches established that glorify God. So that's what you're involved in doing. You're helping us see these churches established among unreached people groups around the world. We are now in Camden, Missouri, Lake of the Ozarks, at our missions training center, where we've been for the last 11 years. And we're helping train the next generation of missionaries. And so we count it a privilege to be able to bring in our experience and be able to challenge and encourage this youngest generation as they move forward and as they look to going overseas. Our department, what we do there at the training center, we're involved in helping the families understand how best to educate their children once they're overseas. So as a family moving out, I'm sure there's a huge question. How are we going to raise our children? What's it going to look like educating our children? We're there to answer those questions, and they give us a 2-week block of time to actually interact and teach the students about what it's going to look like. And we present all the educational options available to them. And then we're available beyond that to answer questions. We're involved with missionaries overseas. They've got a question. Say their son's having a hard time with math. How can we help them? And answering questions with students, and involved with homeschool workshops and different things. Just equipping our families so they can be resilient and strong and stand firm for the long term as they look to planning a church in an unreached people group. One other thing we are involved in doing is hosting and organizing an MK Summit, which is bringing together everyone in our mission organization that's involved with the care and education of children. We come together and we talk about what we're doing, get updates, and then try to pinpoint where we're weak. So how can we reach and help these families care for and educate their children? And so we work together every year just to talk over and look to the next year. What can we do better? How can we improve? I just want to end with a story. How First Christian made an impact in our lives, how you were a huge blessing to us as we were in Brazil. Back, we took about 2 years to learn Portuguese, the national language of Brazil, and we moved up to a remote area, Imperatriz do Maranhão. And that's where we were going to spend the next 7 years of our life, planting a church and unreached people group, the Kalinkachi people. And our first year up there, we were pretty poor. We'd spent all of our money, and the move up there, it was a 2-day journey, and just logistics. We had 2 children at that time, and it was rolling around Christmas time. We were so broke, we couldn't buy toys for our kids. And I remember my wife, she doesn't remember this, and she'll say, no, she didn't do this, but she was crying herself to sleep at night because we couldn't provide a traditional Christmas like what we think of. And we were just barely scraping by as we were trying to transition into this new ministry role. And we were praying, God, just bring together either money so we can buy some gifts for our kids, make it special. Just please do something. Christmas Eve, we were there in town, in Peretriz, and I usually went to town to check, or went to the post office once a day to check mail and get what we had each weekday. And this particular day, I'd already been to the post office, but something prompted me to go back to the post office that afternoon. And I went there, and remember, we were praying. And to my surprise, there was 2 boxes from First Christian that had been mailed way back in August. God had been answering our prayers through you all way back in August before we even knew we had a need. You all sent that. I can't believe it took that long to packages get to us, but it was so timely. We could see God in it. And you guys were a huge encouragement and blessing to our heart, and you kept us encouraged right there in the field in what we were doing in our ministry. And we could see God's hand through you all. And so, once again, thank you so much for the huge blessing you've been to us and our family and our ministry through all the years. Thank you.
Hey, hang on, real quick. Quick question. John and Melanie, their primary work is there in Camden, Missouri, but you just got back from Indonesia. Thailand. Okay. Would you share just real quick what you were doing there?
Okay, I went to an international Third Culture Kid conference, Third Culture Kid. That explains, okay, our missionary children, they go with their families to another country, and they're growing up in another country that's not their parents' home culture, and they're not really experiencing the culture of the people where they're going. And so they're growing up as third culture people. It's a blend of 2 cultures, and so we call them third culture kids. Missionary kids are one segment of that because you have military children, you have children of ambassadors, and so we were gathering all these people around the world to talk about our third culture kids. How can we best help them? And the focus was on the majority nations, what we used to call third world nations. How can we help these countries with limited resources help their families? How can we help them educate and care for their families? And so we came together and we were talking about these things, and we had people good learning time to learn how we can be helping these other countries as they begin sending out missionaries and missionary families.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much, John. And I bring that up because how many of you have ever heard the term third culture kids before? 1, a missionary, and 2, missionary. My point is this. There are things happening in the world that you are impacting, making a difference, making it possible for the gospel to go in places effectively that you don't even know what's going on. But because you are living for Jesus now and in this place are a part of a church that is helping to support that, you are a part of the answer, what God is doing. Paul said, every time we do this that we do, communion, you are proclaiming his death till he comes. That's what we're doing.